In senior year of high school, I was ready to drop out. I was planning a trip to India where I would spend the rest of my life in a cave in the Himalayas. Now, why, you may ask? Well, I wanted to be enlightened. To this day, I still don't know what that means. Maybe it meant that I wanted to be one with God or have some oneness with the universe and experience that. And I kept on coming back to that with psychedelic drugs and mushrooms and acid. And although that was good, I needed something better. I thought no other way to be enlightened other than to isolate myself in a cave all the way across the world. In the meantime of this pursuit to leave, I'm failing my classes. I'm isolating myself from my family, my friends, the people who truly care for me. But I didn't care at all until I remembered something. In second grade, my grandfather used to always pick me up from school. And one day he did, and we're driving home on 280 on the freeway, and all of a sudden he turns to me and he asked me for a favor. And this man, he never asked for favors. But he asked me this. He said, "Jacob, please, if anything ever happens to me, go to higher education. Promise me this." And I did make that promise. I remembered that. And in remembering that promise, a revelation hit me so hard. I'm not only disconnecting from the person I care for the most, but I'm also disconnected from myself. And now I can say that because obviously I'm not in India, nor am I enlightened. I'm now in Mission College, where ironically the mascot here is the Saints, and I'm a biological science major. I've had some great opportunities to work and research with Stanford, and now I get an opportunity to talk about those things here on a TED Talk, and that's really cool. And I tell you all these things not because it makes me feel better, but because there are two themes that run through my story that also run through our human condition. The first theme, disintegration. And to explain disintegration on a human level, I have to explain disintegration on a smaller unit of life. This is Jerry, a swan tear. Now, Jerry the swan tear, he's about 10 times smaller than a grain of sand. He has this neck-like structure to extend, hunt, devour prey, like this poor guy, Jim. Jerry, he works for his own self-interest. He survives for his own wants and needs. He is alone in a foreign environment. He kind of sounds like every male teenager I know. But he also sounds like a deep fear we would never want inside our bodies. A cell that works for its own self-interest, that it survives on its own wants and needs, that is alone in a foreign environment. This deep fear is chaos. No, I'm just kidding. Cancer. Cancer. See, cancer cells don't work like normal cells in our body. The cells in our bodies, they communicate through electrical signals that organize cell behavior, to align, to organize, to behave towards community goals, to serve higher functions, such as healing a wound or fighting off an infection. The electrical cells, they use electrical signals and information, and they share it like a game of telephone, where they're spreading the word from one cell to the other. But cancer cells, they don't work like that. They don't play that game. They play their own game. It's called survival. See, cancer cells, they are disintegrated from the bioelectrical field of the community. And many times too many, this disintegration is due to a highly stressful situation. And it's possibly of life or death in the cell. And it forces the cell to disconnect, to detach, to isolate. They no longer view the body as a bigger system of itself, but rather something foreign, something dangerous. In a metaphor, the cancer cell has shrunken, the awareness has fractured, and it returns to its old self-pursuits, just like our old friend Jerry. It takes one cancer cell, just one, to create a cascade of misalignment in the body, which we know as tumors. Now, I speak on cancer because my grandma, she lost her life due to lung cancer last September. And see, grandma, she never touched a cigarette in her life. She ended up with lung cancer. But she also suffered from anxiety and depression for almost her entire life. like most of us who have encountered stressful situations constantly in our lives, imagine living in it every day, constantly. That inflammation, that damage that is done to the body and the mind over time, just think about that. A cell that lives in that environment can't. You no longer trust the body to provide for its well-being. It rebels. In the case of my grandma, that inflammation was stored in the lung. And the hypothesis is that that inflammation was the perfect environment for cancer to form. A stressful environment, a traumatic experience can alter someone's perspective, just as it alters the perspective of ourselves. And in this way, cancer is more than an illness. It is a phenomenon of disintegration that extends on many dimensions of life. It is as prevalent in our bodies as in our bigger body, the human system, the human society. For example, I truly believe that retired homes have failed our elders. And I say this because 1/4 of American senior citizens are socially isolated and lonely. That loneliness and the absence of depression is creating a 22% increase in premature death. People die quicker when they're lonely at old age. In cancer patients whose cells are isolated, that reflects in society. If you go find the correlations between cancer and isolation, in every study you'll find that more than 1/3 of the people in that study were either depressed, suicidal, isolated. I have a patient for you. His name is Sonny. See, Sonny, he lives across the street from my home in a senior citizen apartment. And when I met him, he had no car. He had a house that was that of the hoarders. And he was divorced. His daughter never came to see him. He suffered from depression, diabetes, sclerosis, cancer. His main goal every day was to just eat his oatmeal. That was it. And other than that, it was sleep, sleep, more sleep. And he says he's not alone. He tells me a lot of stories about people who live in that same community that never come out their rooms, never. No one ever comes to visit them. And whenever I walk in that room or that apartment, I just feel the energy is just draining my spirit. It's just very obvious, very contagious. There's great people with great stories, great ideas, great accomplishments that are just rotting away, isolated. And that's kind of hard to accept. Disintegration is part of the human condition. That one's pretty hard to accept. But there's another side to this story, a comeback story. I said I have 2 themes for you today, and I do. The second theme is reintegration, or more importantly, healing. So the question is, how do we heal? To heal cancer, we don't have to resort to chemotherapy to destroy cancer cells, because what that does to the body is actually destroys the tissue that's healthy and that surrounds the cancer cell. It's increasing the chance of causing more stress in that place, more inflammation, and therefore more cancer to form. Instead, we can reintegrate cancer into the community because we are starting to understand what these electrical patterns mean and how they relate to cancer cells. We can show those disintegrated patterns a new technology and then reintegrate them into the body, into the community for greater health. And one way we're doing that is with electrodes. This metal rod is about the size of a hair, and it communicates electricity to the cancer cell, basically saying, hey, man, you're not alone. Look, there's Steve, your cousin. There's Jordan over there. Oh, and Sahar, she's right there. You're not alone, man. You're not alone. And that's pretty fascinating. What I'm saying is that you don't have to villainize cancer cells because all cancer wants to do is come home. We've already been using electrodes in the body to treat opioid addictions, to regenerate, reintegrate overactive electrical patterns in the brain, away from the cravings of opioids, towards reintegration back into society as a functional human being. It's pretty incredible. But there's also a second way to harness the power of bioelectricity. And not all drugs are bad. About 20% of pharmaceutical drugs on the market right now are those that interact with the channels that these electrical pathways move through. We can use these drugs to organize cell behavior, to grow back limbs, body structures, like two-headed worm, this five-legged frog. And to me, this is really interesting, not because we want two-headed frogs or two-headed worms, five-headed frogs running around everywhere, but because we can start making the miracle medicine that people need to grow back a finger, or a cataract in their eye to cure blindness, or grow back brain tissue that has created Alzheimer's in somebody. That's the important part. We can now regenerate by understanding that bioelectricity and its patterns can organize cell behavior. Bioelectricity is redefining health and healing, but it also reflects the healing that we as human beings are capable of. But to talk about reintegration in our bodies, I have to talk about reintegration in us, people. You know, we are very good at separating ourselves from human beings. Right? We know that. We in the Bay are the first to realize this one. You know, maybe the perspective that we have, and we limit our perspective to political views or cultural background, or we isolate ourselves in anxiety and depression. Hey, that may not be our fault, but we're alone in a foreign environment. Or we fail to see past our own superficial identities that we form for ourselves. We wake up every day saying to ourselves, this is who I think I am. As a student, I wake up sometimes saying, I'm a student. This is who I think I am. Or the Democrat wakes up saying, this is who I think I am. Or the Republican, African American, white, gay. Or the guy who wants to isolate in a cave in the Himalayas. This is who I think I am. But who you are may be much more than that. Instead of a perspective that is isolated and works for its own self-interest, surviving on its own wants and needs, as alone in a foreign environment, you can have a perspective that extends into another human being, another community, an entire species, possibly everything that exists in time and space, a true oneness with the universe, based on a perspective that you are a part of something bigger than yourself. I want to let you know that Old Man Sonny is doing a little bit better. He has a house that is much more livable. He has a car. He can go to his local mosque whenever he wants to. And it just took just a little bit of connection. He reminds me constantly that I give him energy, bioelectrical energy. And yes, he does still have cancer, but hopefully we can take the next leap of faith into bioelectrical healing for millions across the world like Sonny. And I tell these stories because, like the story in the science of our cells, it can spark something of transformation, connection, reintegration in ourselves. And as a society, we have a long way to go. But we are, at the end of the day, a society. And as individuals, we are connected. We have a unique purpose that determines the health of our families, our communities, the entire earth, our planet. And that purpose depends on a perspective, how we act through that perspective. Thank you.